Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is the homecoming of the Israeli hostages. The return has been at the forefront of almost everything I've been doing, thinking, and writing and speaking about. We stayed up all night watching the hostages return. That night, lovers of Israel, Jews and non-Jews, older and younger, pulled what college students call an all-nighter. We held our breath, waited and worried, and then broke into cheers and wiped away tears. It was inspiring. It was emotional. It was a dream come true. It was also a vicarious celebration. Lovers of Israel, as cliché as it may sound, are linked to the destiny of Israel. When Israel weeps, we weep. And when Israel celebrates, we celebrate. We understand that ours cannot adequately mirror the intensity of feeling, whether it be in pain or happiness felt by Israelis living in Israel, but we nevertheless share in those feelings. Our children, nephews, nieces, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents, and friends are in Israel. So whatever Israel feels, we too feel. We in the diaspora are living testament to the classic poem penned in the 12th century by Yehuda Halevi, the Spanish philosopher, physician, and Jewish poet. The poem entitled Libi Bamizrach, or My Heart is in the East, goes on to say, while I am in the midst of the West. These hundreds of years later, it resonates, it rings so very true for so many of us, the lovers of Israel who live in the diaspora. That truth was echoed by Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who is buried in Ukraine, in the city of Uman, who 500 years later taught the lesson that every step I take, I walk towards Jerusalem. This diaspora Jewish connection to Israel is deeper than we are led to believe. Doomsayers may correctly point to the polls that show a weakening of connection, especially of the younger generation, younger Jews in the United States. But the truth is that this younger generation is more skeptical than previous generations. They have a more complicated or nuanced relationship with Israel. Their grandparents enjoy a more monodimensional relationship with Israel. Their grandparents have an unconditional love and affinity for Israel. This younger generation, those who love Israel, do so in their own way, a way that is replete with caveats and conditions for everything, including, of course, Israel. Needless to say, I'm not referring to those young Jews born into Jewish families who parrot Hamas's talking points. Those Jews, of which there are more and more, are Jews who lack a Jewish soul. Fortunately, while they are a disturbing group, they are still a minority. A poll of New York Jews published in 2025 and conducted by the Jewish Federations of New York found that 64% of those Jews polled feel very or somewhat attached to Israel. 55% of those polls have friends or family living in Israel. These are important and significant numbers. They represent the reason not to fear our future. The reason is love of Israel is personal. And within the Jewish community, there is a foundation of support for Israel, not just among Orthodox mention of the Jewish community, but within the overall community of American Jewry. When it's personal, the link is deeper and more substantive. Having a friend or loved one in Israel means that there is a direct link. The safety and security of Israel is linked to the safety and security of a friend or a loved one. It is no longer logical or political or religious. It's personal. It's akin to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, which reads, an attack on one is an attack on all. Article 5 was invoked only once in the aftermath of 9/11. If unity's shared commitments are true for NATO, just imagine how strong they are for Jews in the diaspora and their link to Israel. News from Israel and about Israel, good and bad, resonate deeply for Jews. The massacre of October 7th, 2023 created a sense of collective belonging for many Jews and non-Jews, lovers of Israel, bonded together, bridging religious divides and political divides. As one, they formed a deep emotional bond, but they also caused a divide. For the lovers of Israel, the Jewish state causes them to feel pride. For the haters of Israel and the Jewish state, it causes them to be embarrassed and angered. In the year 2021, according to the Pew study, 82% of Jews polled asserted that caring for Israel was essential or very important to their Jewish identity. Today, post-October 7th, the numbers have dropped, the trend has shifted. The too long-awaited joyous homecoming of living hostages buoyed diaspora Jewry much as it buoyed Israelis. Together we wait for and continue to pray for the return of all the bodies killed after having been taken hostage. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from The Catalyst, which is the business finance section of Ynet. This piece is about Joel Mokyr, who just won the Nobel Prize in Economics. He's an Israeli-American. The piece is authored by Shlomo Teitelbaum of The Catalyst, Ynet, and it was published on October 18th, 2025. The title is, After winning the Nobel Prize, Joel Mokyr says, I'm still Israeli, and the hostages' return meant more than the prize. This is how Teitelbaum begins. Although he has lived and taught in the United States for 50 years, Professor Joel Mokyr, one of 3 recipients of this year's Nobel Prize in Economics, says he is far more moved by the return of Israeli hostages than by his own win. His sharp criticism of Donald Trump, but welcomes the president's aversion to war. While Israelis are gripped by a whirlwind of emotion surrounding the release of the hostages in Gaza, remembrance of fallen soldiers, and, on a lighter note, the whirlwind visit of U.S. President Donald Trump in Israel, Israeli-American professor Joel Mokyr was experiencing a different kind of drama. Teitelbaum describes how Mokyr discovered that he won the prize. Other winners have referred to this moment as the phone call. He writes, quoting Mokyr, on Monday, he received a call informing him that he had won the most prestigious award in his field, the Nobel Prize in Economics. I was completely stunned. I didn't expect it at all, Mokyr told Catalyst. There's a long list of people who deserved it. The Nobel Prize is a great material for academic gossip. I was totally shocked, but, as they say, I will take the money. Mokyr went on to name another scholar he believes should have won. For years I've thought the Nobel Prize should go to my friend Elchanan Helpman, who was Israel's greatest economist. Mokyr is very critical of Trump, and his humor, though tongue-in-cheek, is funny and very biting, he says. When reminded that there's another figure with Israeli ties, President Donald Trump, who had been openly expecting to win the Nobel Prize, Mokyr replied with a mix of criticism and sarcasm. Maybe he deserves a Nobel Prize in Medicine for his insights on the link between Tylenol and autism. But I don't see things only through an Israeli lens. I look at what he does. He holds grudges forever. I also think his role in the hostages' release was smaller than people think. The ceasefire was already in place when Biden left office, but I understand he's very popular in Israel. But Mokyr does have one good thing to say about Trump. He is genuinely against war and killing. Mokyr gives him that credit. Teitelbaum writes, as for Ukraine, he completely failed. In the Middle East, the shooting stopped, and that's wonderful, but I don't know how long that will last in Gaza and the West Bank. Trump has a very short attention span, so it's worrisome. The moment he sees that the path to an arrangement is getting complicated, he might just move on to something else. Teitelbaum describes how Mokyr is very much still an Israeli who teaches a course at Tel Aviv University every year. He writes, at 79, Mokyr remains deeply engaged with Israeli politics and current events. My heart rejoiced when the hostages returned, he said. Winning the prize pales in comparison. Nothing is more important than bringing our sons and daughters home. I wish the families healing from this trauma, and I hope there are never Israeli hostages again. Moker has taught at Northwestern University in Illinois for more than 50 years. He was raised in Israel and earned his first academic degree at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. A historian and economist, he holds full appointments in both the history and economics departments. Though it's been decades since Moker lived in Israel, Moker still sees himself as Israeli. I have an Israeli passport, an Israeli heart, he said. This prize also says something about Israel. He also maintains academic ties with Israel, teaching at Tel Aviv University. I don't need to attend faculty meetings. This is an honorary appointment, but I teach a mini course there every year. It's an excellent economics department, and they'll share in the credit for the prize, which they absolutely deserve. Now Teitelbaum explains Moker's work, in layman's terms, of course. It's straightforward, very simple. Moker explains his contribution in layman's terms. It's not enough for a technology to work in order to drive growth. We need to understand scientifically why it works. Inventions before technological revolution lacked that understanding. Without a scientific grasp of how technology functions, it's very difficult to replicate innovation. His research emphasized that for innovation to take root and fuel sustained growth, society must be open to new ideas, allowing a change. Teitelbaum concludes, quoting from an earlier interview with Moker, in which he emphasized the need to avoid war. In another interview with Calculus during the Iron Swords War in January 2024, Moker was more direct. The problem is that technological progress hasn't matched by institutional progress. We haven't learned how to avoid war. In that conversation, he noted that in the 20th century, it took countries 10 to 15 years to recover from a war. Almost every war leads to a rapid increase in national debt, and then you pay for it. What wonderful insight. Congratulations, Professor Joel Moker. This is a powerful piece written just before the hostage return. The column also from Ynet, published October 13th, 2025 by Menachem Cohen, entitled Hamas Chose Simchat Torah to Attack. Now is the time to reclaim joy. Subtitled, The Enemy Chose Simchat Torah, not October 7th for the massacre. As a people, we must remember this and restore the holiday's joy through living remembrance that connects us to our identity. This is how Cohen begins. Since the deadly terror attack on Simchat Torah 2 years ago, when more than 1,200 Israelis were murdered and many others kidnapped, the Gregorian date of October 7th has become a national and even international symbol of collective trauma. It's etched into the public consciousness as a deep wound, mentioned in every conversation, report, and memorial, and rightly so. Cohen now explains that the terrorists attempted to do on October 7th. He also explains why they failed. That Jewish tradition in Simchat Torah especially is a vehicle that shows that the dead will be remembered. He writes, but amid the pain, it's worth asking, why did the terrorists choose this date for such a brutal massacre? What were they trying to destroy, silence, and erase? Simchat Torah is a day of joy and unity. It brings together the entire spectrum of the Jewish people, religious and secular, young and old, men and women, left and right, around the Torah. It is the happiest day in the Jewish holiday season, marked by singing, dancing, and celebration of the Torah itself. Even a Jew who doesn't know a single letter of Torah joins in the joy of Simchat Torah, simply because he is Jewish, because of the enduring bond between the Jewish people and God, and the gift of Torah we received. Cohen uses Kibbutz Be'eri as the example for Simchat Torah. He explains, at Kibbutz Be'eri, one of the community's hardest hit in the October 7th massacre, residents spent that Simchat Torah huddled in safe rooms. A year later, they made a deliberate choice to dance, to celebrate as much as possible, and to dedicate a hakafa, a dance circle, to the affected communities, to the soldiers, and to the hostages. We'll make up for last year, too, they said. A powerful symbol of the resolve to reclaim the joy that was stolen. Their story shows how even in the shadow of grief, the holiday can become a source of light and strength. This year, October 7th, fell on the eve of Sukkot, prompting many to wonder how to balance the holiday's joy with the weight of memory. Should a non-Hebrew date become a national Memorial Day? Ironically, the attempt to extinguish our joy demands that we amplify it, as many border communities demonstrate through their dancing. Now Cohen quotes his Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who said, "Invest in the living." He writes, the Lubavitcher Rebbe taught that true remembrance is expressed through investing in life. When the Jewish leader once suggested leaving an empty chair at the Passover Seder in memory of Holocaust victims, the Rebbe replied, "Fill it with a celebrating Jew. That is a living legacy, a Jewish victory." So too, Simchat Torah must become a time not just of remembrance, but of life-affirming action. At the same time, the Knesset, in partnership with rabbis, community leaders, and representatives across the Israeli society, should establish an official National Day of Remembrance, with ceremonies and Torah study, without undermining the joyous nature of the holiday the terrorists sought to destroy. Cohen concludes by emphasizing memory and purpose. He writes, even those who prefer the neutral Gregorian date can likely agree that a Hebrew date connects us more deeply to our shared identity. This is how we turn pain into purpose, just as so many in the hardest hit regions have shown us. By dancing, rejoicing, and dedicating that joy to those we've lost and those still fighting. The choice is ours because Hamas set out to shatter our joy. We will reclaim it. We will remember, honor life, and once again dance with the Torah in our arms. Jewish joy, in the end, is our most powerful victory over darkness. With God's help, we pray that this year the circle will be complete and we will celebrate Simchat Torah with dozens of hostages who, at last, return home. Excellent piece, Menachem Cohen. Thank you. Remember, this was written just before the return of the living hostages. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 8 cartoons today. All are about the peace deal, the ceasefire deal, Gaza, Israel, Bibi, Trump. Most are very biting. Surprisingly, only one is about the return of the hostages. That is our last cartoon that we'll discuss today. In this first cartoon, it shows Mother Gaza starving without food. This cartoon was actually published in the midst of the ceasefire and the peace deal. For the artist, despite the ceasefire, he still thinks that Gaza is being abused by Israel. The second cartoon is one of many featuring the Dove of Peace. The dove is actually a mountain covered with snow, and Trump is climbing through the snow to get to the olive branch in the dove's mouth. The artist is saying how hard and difficult it is to get to the peace. This cartoon shows a dove on a nest with an olive branch in its mouth, sitting on a map of Gaza. At least the artist is not negative in this depiction. The fourth cartoon is a dove with a red blonde hair and a red tie, olive branch in mouth, Trump obviously. Again, not negative, but hardly positive either. The fifth cartoon is caustic. 3 people are rolling up the money called the Gaza Peace Plan in the shape of Gaza. Bibi, Trump, and Arab leaders. How cynical can you be? Next depicts Bibi and Trump throwing an olive branch into a food bowl of Gaza. In other words, peace is here, but not food. They need food. Again, so cynical. The seventh cartoon depicts Trump as a golden statue with a dove in his hand, encircled by vultures, and destroyed Gaza all around them. This is biting. And finally, We will see a more positive cartoon. This last cartoon is an Israeli flag, and the Star of David has a smile in it. Underneath it reads, "Hostages freed." Yes, Israel is very happy that the hostages are freed and home. Finally, some artist conveyed that in a cartoon. Thank you. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Hostage survivor David Cuneo was released from the hospital and returned to his home in Yavne alongside his wife Sharon. He said, "Thank you to the people of Israel." Hostage survivor Maxim Harkin has been released from Sheba Medical Center in Tel HaShomer and has returned to his home in Kiryat Carmel. Quote, "The medical center staff will continue to support the returning hostages and their families through the Returning to Life Center," the hospital announced. Hostage survivor Elkanah Bobat has returned to his home in Mevaseret Zion, just outside of Jerusalem, after being released from the hospital. He was emotional. He cried. He made a heart sign with his hands to the crowd that came to welcome him in the street. The two siblings, twins, Gali and Ziv Berman, arrived at Kibbutz Beit Guvrin, their home, after being discharged from the hospital. The siblings thanked everyone who came to support them. "We love you all. Thank you very much for love. You are an amazing people. Am Yisrael Chai." As former hostage Omri Miran released from the hospital, he ordered and sent flowers to every wounded soldier in his hospital, with a note thanking them for fighting to save him and the other hostages. What an amazing gesture. Only about 50% of survivors from the massacre at the Nova Music Festival on October 7, 2023 have returned to work for at least 5 consecutive months. This was revealed in the National Insurance Institute study at the Youth Committee meeting. Out of 3,559 terror victims who survived the Nova Festival and the other parties, only about 50% returned to work as a continuous period of at least 5 months, and another 10% for a continuous period of 4 months. Unfortunately, the rest have not returned to work and are dealing with severe trauma from the massacre. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. I want to show you an inspiring clip from Israel following or leading up to the return of the hostages. Rachel Goldberg-Polin, mother of Hirsch, who was unfortunately returned to her for burial. She describes the experience of what the families are going through. Watch this powerful, powerful presentation.
What is happening to all of us, our nation right now, is so deeply complex that my knees are buckling. I awoke Thursday to messages from families with live hostages who we pray are now coming home imminently, and they were sharing words of thanks. I also received messages from families of dead hostages who will get their children back in body bags. All were asking variations of how do we do this. They know that John and I know what it is like to get your child returned in a bag. Some said they fear the locations of their loved ones' bodies are unknown. I also had messages from among the thousands of family members of people killed on the holiday of Simchat Torah, who will have to forever say the memorial prayer of Yizkor and mourners Kaddish on Simchat Torah. They will have yortzites on that day, and they will always remember what happened to their loved ones on that day of Simchat Torah for the rest of their time here in this world. There will be no repackaging, no rebranding, no costumes, and no makeup. that can change the thousands of memorial candles that will have to be lit on Simchat Torah. There is so much pain. And I was flooded with messages these past 3 days that have been drenched in confusion. The favorite line I read, quote, "I am happy, but so sad, but happy, but so sad. Yes." And then today in synagogues all over the world, we read the book of Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes, which is attributed to the wise King Solomon. Curiously, this book is read each year right now in the Shabbat that falls right in the middle of the holiday of Sukkot. Sukkot, which the Torah in the Bible, it tells us, is called the time of our happiness. But the book of Ecclesiastes is anything but joyous in theme. It explains to us the futility of life, that there will be different moments in this life that seem diametrically opposed to each other, but each of those situations will have specific occasions to be experienced. And so in chapter 3, we are told there is a season for everything and a time for everything. But now today we are being asked to digest all of those seasons, all of those times at the exact same second. Winter, spring, summer, fall, experience all four right now. It says there is a time to be born and a time to die, and we have to do both right now. It says there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, and we have to do both right now. It says there is a time to hug and a time to hold back from hugging, and we have to do both right now. It says there is a time to tear and a time to heal, and we have to do both right now. It says there is a time to be silent and a time to speak, and we have to do both right now. And it says there is a time to sob. And there's a time to dance, and we have to do both right now. I know that the country, the nation, Jews all over the world are starving to celebrate and be done with this dark chapter. Being miserable and in pain is tiring. Believe me, I know. But we are not done yet until they are all home.
Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week for my 400th show on JBS.